feel like an intro, but this season 2 could have been done in one, but felt I needed 2. The perfection of our conception projected through reflection that's connected is a blessing, and I needed 2. Plus I need a few moments just to speak to you about these individuals whose mission to deceiving you, saying the achievable is just so unachievable, but that's only conceivable if you say and believe it's true. Protect the presence of essence with the aggression of a guard dog. Did you forget you was a god, y'all? Maybe you need someone believing you. Well, damn it, I believe in you. Not cause I'm expecting perception, I can see me in you. There's power in the questions and lessons is what I teach to you. Injecting my perspective suggested, no, I don't preach to you. Rejecting that you less than forever, know that you equal to. But this really for my people though, cause evil grows inside of the kind of minds that our ego drove. So engulfed inside of they ride, they cannot see the road. They criticize your drive, apply, they won't even go. Cause fear and faith is the only thing in comparison. One requires courage, the other desires evidence. How can what was ever determine what never been? Then again, the devil is ignorance mixed with arrogance. But we are the conscious collective. And CC, so I hope you get the message. But we are the conscious collective. Or CC, so I hope you get the message. Welcome. Man, that feel good there. Welcome. Thank you. You are too kind. You are what they call too kind. But welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. It's your man Q. It's your guy Q. It's your brother Q. This is going to be an impromptu episode because my nephew just had a baby. So the name of the show is There is Power in the Question. Information is information. We are in season 2, people. This season is about wisdom. So I don't know how many episodes I probably did before this. I know I have another episode with my guy Jay we're supposed to record, but I'm doing season 2 a little ahead of time. I want to be prepared for you guys. So when I get season 2, I don't want y'all to have too many days where it's, hey man, it's Wednesday, 12 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. What an episode. I don't want to do that to y'all because y'all see how long I made you wait for season 2. That was simply because I want you to be able to go through season 1. Trust me, go through season 1. You're going to get so much more. And I think I tell some good stories, especially the last one, episode 21, Story Time with Q, chapter 3. That might be the most fun episode. It's probably between that one and My Anger Was Managed, because that was the bonus episode where I tell you guys what happened when I went to anger management. That motherfucker hit me in both my eyes. But anyway, so I don't want to have too many gaps. I want to try to get them if they're going to be weekly, if they're going to be bi-weekly. They're probably going to be weekly. This is basically how I did episode 6 in season 1. R.I.E. my brother-in-law, Tony. I hope you're resting in eternity. I had an episode planned and I planned to do some things. Then my brother-in-law passed. So I decided to sit down and talk about him and what I consider to be honoring him in something I feel like means so much to me. Like this show means so much to me because it's my ideals. It's my belief. It's who I am. It's the thing about me that I think actually makes me special, which is the way I perceive things and the way that I put these ideals together, the way I put these concepts together, the way I perceive these things is one thing in itself that I believe is special. But the way that I try to convey it to you guys, that's the thing where I like input, because the way I can tell you something that could be valuable, I can miss the point in my presentation. You may not be able to see exactly what I'm talking about because my presentation wasn't more palatable for you. Because even if you disagree, which I'm 100% okay with, you can disagree with everything I'm saying, but I at least want you to be able to hear what I'm saying and give me your alternative. Give me something in its place that you believe in as strongly as I believe in that we are gods, that I think we are the most amazing thing walking because we came from everything. No matter what you believe, if you believe we came from a god, if you believe we came from dust, the gases exploded in space, we on the back of a turtle, it was some clay, it was some titans, and then they had kids who locked them up and then made humans. Whoever we think is amazing, we're of that. So if I'm saying all that, I don't want somebody to miss the point because my presentation wasn't in a way where they can understand. Because if you understand what I perceive and you can tell me something different that feels that amazing, that you can prove, like I can prove to you, you are one of one. I can prove to you that you can't exist without the opposite of you, your reflection. I can tell you fear doesn't exist. I can prove that to you because you can't go grab fear. To tell you that everything you think about is under your control. I can prove that to you. I can prove to you that you create just like the God did you when you go to sleep. You can do it in a conscious world. And if you actually come together with your reflection, you can do it in the physical world. You are a God. So if you can hear all that I'm saying, understand it because my presentation is right and how amazing I believe this is because I can prove everything I'm saying. And if you understand that, if you understand how amazing that feels to believe that, and you have an alternative that you can put in its place, I want to hear it because that shit sounds like it would be amazing. This is why I want you to be who you are. Remember what I described. It's watching someone do something that I cannot do. And if I can never be you, only you can tell me your story. And I just want it to be your story and not some shit you heard from someone else. But anyway, so I'm giving you guys my story and ideas on creation itself. So to stop what I'm doing and give that spot to honor someone else shows how much they meant to me and how much I value them. And today is about to be that type of episode for a person that, in a sense of how much I value them, this person held the number one spot for a while. You couldn't even talk crazy. I get real aggressive if I don't like the energy you giving him. I get real protective. He was like my cub, and it was my duty to protect him. That's how much I valued this person. I'm only 6 years older than him. That's a story within itself. But I looked at it as, I'm going to try to be everything for him that no one was for me except one person. And I'm going to talk about both of them today. That's how it's like episode 6. But this is for a joyous occasion because that person, he said I can say his name. So Lakeem, that's who this episode is going to be about because he just had a child. He just had a son. If y'all only knew what we've been through, and he got his own story, I'm sure of it. I can see it in his eyes. I can hear it in his voice. He has a child now. He is a dad now. He gets to be something to someone that he never had. And to speak to the character of him that I believe I helped mold, he chooses faith in a moment where a lot of people choose fear, responsibility. But in that responsibility, he had the option to say, I can be to someone what someone that was in my position never was to me. Some people may know, some may not understand the concept of not having a parent, to not have the other half of what created you. That's a struggle within itself that you must deal with. And a lot of people don't pay attention to that part of you. But to take that responsibility and say, I'm going to be to them everything I ever wanted. You bring forth creation. You remember how I told you about that teacher I had for a little while where her act of kindness, me seeing that in my perception while I'm developing, I'm a little deity. And that's one of the things I perceive is an act of kindness when you didn't have to. But I had another type of teacher. That bitch didn't give a fuck about me. She said, if y'all pass or not, I'm going to still get paid. That's the type of shit that bitch, Miss Thompson, would say. But this lady who wasn't even my full-time teacher, I'm in passing before I get to Mr. Burns. Well, that fight break out. That's episode 21 for those who don't know what I'm referencing. So that proves that it exists, that someone doesn't have to give a fuck about me as a child. That's how I'm looking at it. I'm looking at that's in creation. I have evidence this exists. There's a type of teacher, quote unquote teacher like this. So I know they exist. And then to come in contact with another teacher, I'm a child. I'm just learning what's in creation. I'm learning this shit for the first time, second time, third time. You're seeing the consistency. You're seeing the pattern. You're learning life right now. And these are the people who was put in your place for your tutelage. So I'm learning from that bitch, Miss Thompson, that this is a type of teacher. This is a type of an adult. Her acts, I didn't see acts of kindness from the people I'm supposed to learn from. And she looked out for me if I was hungry or if she can tell like I was sad or I probably was fighting. She didn't have to. I know she didn't have to because I seen it exist another way. I told you I'm sitting there with my lip bloody. She didn't say anything. She didn't say a thing. Like I'm sitting there quiet and my lip is busted. This episode 16, just in case you wonder what I'm referencing from last season. So if I see an act of kindness, I choose to mirror that because I know it exists. So that bring forth creation, acts of kindness that you can do to somebody just by giving a fuck, just in a moment. One moment you may give a fuck to somebody and it may mean the world to them. It could be one moment. You may have 3-4 moments with some people, but you don't know how deep that can resonate with someone. And with my nephew, Lakeem, I'm watching him make the choice. He wants to give something to someone that was never given to him, even though it was never given to him. He chose to give you all the things he wanted. All the time he wished, hey, why isn't he here? Why doesn't the other half of the reason I'm created, why aren't they here? I'm seeing other people have their father. That's what we do as kids. We think. Now, I'm not a kid anymore, but I'm saying from that perspective, we're learning the world at that level. And if this is how I see it, if this is correct, I feel like I had a hand in that because I gave him something that I wanted that I didn't have, which was a man to give a fuck about you that can at least tell you what's going to happen 6 years down the future, possibly. How can you help prepare me for that? It doesn't take the place of the parent. No one can. But being that thing for a motherfucker right there can mean so much to him. Because that's what Donnie, my big cousin Donnie, that's what he did to me. So because of Donnie's act of kindness, I wanted to create my act of kindness, which was in kind to my nephew, Lakeem. And I tried to be everything I could for him. I'm only 6 years older than him, but I tried to be everything I could for him. And every time I wasn't there, every time I couldn't make it, every time I wish I could have been there to protect him, and he probably needed me, and I just wasn't there. The times that I was mean so much to him. Because you can never know what a person really goes through. But to put a hand in trying to help create that, and him reassuring me by, I'm sorry, I'm going to tell Keem. I got to tell the story, Keem, okay? I love you. But it's just for they get to understand it. So every Father's Day, Lakeem would text me a long paragraph thanking me for being that to him when I didn't have to. Erykah Badu was saying, your kids are supposed to be an improvement on your model. So I tried to be that role model to him. And he is an improvement on the model I was. Because he's sending me that text message every Father's Day to let me know he still hasn't forgot. That shows how important that is and that means to him, which makes me feel crazy because I'm like, that's what I was trying to give you. And he's an improvement on the model because I never sent Donnie no damn text message every year thanking him for being that father-like figure, the person I put in that place that I was missing as the person I looked up to for everything on what it is to be a man. Donnie is the reason I got into this concept of learning and concept of knowledge and wisdom. All this shit I spit is because it was Donnie's inspiration. I'm growing up around drug dealers and poverty. Donnie ass like, yeah, I'm from that same shit, but I'm gonna go to college. Donnie ass used to leave the house at like 6 in the morning and get back at like 10 p.m. He did that shit constantly and never complained. I'm watching this nigga. I said, this nigga is amazing. Then I go around my block and I gotta listen to these dudes tell me how, yeah, man, I gotta sell this because how else I'm gonna make this money as a black man in America? I'm like, Donnie ass doing it? It just shows how kind Donnie's heart is, how caring Donnie's heart is. Donnie tells me this infamous story that he's probably told 100 different times. Donnie's like the old young guy of the family. My big cousin, Donnie. Love you, Donnie. So Donnie could have been out there hustling because, you know, who our family is and stuff like that, you know, in the community or whatever. But Donnie is the oldest of our generation. Like Donnie is the oldest cousin or the eldest cousin. So Donnie is like our old man. So I'm the youngest of the family. Donnie's the oldest, which is crazy because that's like the reflections of each other. You see that shit? You see how deep that can go? Donnie, I don't even got kids, and my nieces and nephew got kids. But I was the youngest of my generation, and then my nieces and nephews come after. But Donnie said something that just shows how caring his heart is. The motherfucker could have been hustling, making all that money. He was in the same type of poor we were all in. We had the same struggle. Shit was tough. It seemed like it'd be easy to just make this little quick money. You know, who you hurting? You just selling a little product. You got to get that little fast money. Why not take that easy way out, Donnie? I asked him, talking to him, I asked him about it. Because Donnie didn't see it that way. He had such a kind heart, such a caring heart, where he thought about the people that fall for it, and he was right with them. Like, yeah, man, they do the black man like this. And I looked at Donnie like, what? How can you say that? You the motherfucker that fought the odds. Why didn't you take the easy route and sell the drugs, Donnie? Get this quick money. We pulled, Donnie, together. I was there. Donnie said, no, I couldn't do it because I knew I had you, Greg. I knew y'all looked up to me. Because most of the men in our family are gone or dead. So they gone. They gone one way or another. So Donnie had to take the position of the male hierarchy because the ones beyond him either wasn't giving a good example or dead. They were gone. They was gone. They was not there or they was dead. So Donnie took that responsibility on and said, no, I'd rather do this the quote unquote right way for their safety, for them to see something in their perception that if they want to mimic, it'll be like this. To say, yeah, the odds are stacked against you. Yeah, this shit is tough, but keep fucking fighting. You a man, ain't you? You a god, aren't you? Donnie the nigga that had the Da Vinci Code. I'm reading the fucking Da Vinci Code. I'm young as hell. Donnie put that, search for knowledge. Donnie is the one that introduced me into Tupac. Then Tupac gets me to Malcolm X. Malcolm X get me to Jesus. I don't think he understands the role he played to me. And it's probably because my nephew he's an improvement on an older model, which is me. So I take that place like Donnie did for me to him. And he had enough emotional intelligence, emotional strength, and emotional bravery to say, as a man, you gonna always be pops to me for what you did for me. That shit hit different when you understand it like that. That's the importance of a role model. Because it's somebody taking a responsibility that they didn't have to take. Because motherfuckers have done it before. Motherfuckers have just left. Motherfuckers have not been that. Motherfuckers have been worse than that. So they exist. So it's a choice that you can make. And to still say, fuck that. What they have to look up to, I don't care how many times they see it fucked up. When they look my way, it's going to look good. Because all I'm going to do is the best that I can. And that's what I want them to understand. Just do the best you can. And if you're doing anything less than that, who else's fault is it? Yeah, the shit tough. We got to fight through tough. Nobody said this shit was going to be easy. So I'm watching Donnie as this motherfucker leave the house 6 a.m. Come back 10 p.m. Get up. I'm over there. Donnie. I want to play and shit. Donnie. I told y'all, this is the motherfucker I wrote the essay about, who is my hero and why, and won a state essay competition. I won it first place. Do you see how much of an impact he had on me? But still, my nephew, this motherfucker is an improvement on the model to see it that deeply and say, as a man, you still pops because of what you did for me. And that person is who I want to talk about today, because that person is a father. And I know he's going to be everything to that little boy that he wanted for himself. And he's making that choice. And I feel like I have a small part to play in it. But he tells me it's fucking massive. That mean everything I gave, that little bit I thought I gave him, he magnifies it because he understands it in a place that is fucking in creation. To understand a motherfucker can't actually substitute, but the effect you can have on a motherfucker could be that strong. Because I love this motherfucker with everything I had. I love this little motherfucker like he was my son. I was willing to fight, kill, and die for him. Because he was my first chance to try to pay it forward what Donnie was for me. I'm going to be everything to you I wish someone was to me. But then I look and say, Donnie his value was almost equal to. That's how much of an impact he had on me. that it can rival the concept of my actual father. Him missing is dwindled because of Donnie's presence. Donnie is the reason I never had hate for my father leaving. He left when I was 5. That mean that nigga was there and was like, oh, this little nigga cool. And he's like, I don't like this little nigga no more, I'm out. It's crazy, but that's how that shit feel when you go fatherless. Like, nigga, why you help create me? And for Keem to call me Pops, to send me the shit all these father days, he don't know how much that shit means to me. Like, I'm holding back tears just talking about the love I have for my nephew. Because he's finna be a father. He is a father. He's that actual thing we were missing. He gets to become that for something he created, despite not having it. I understand how valuable parents are. And I said I'm going to do an episode about parents. I definitely should. I should probably do it sometime after this one so I can connect them so you can see what I'm talking about with the importance of a parent. But imagine understanding just how important a parent is, then imagine the effect of not having one. But I'll get into that in the parents episode. So when someone has that effect on them, that level of pain on them that they walk around with, every day they choose to be here, they're carrying that level of pain. And to still show an act of kindness, mercy, love, and just I give a fuck to make that choice in spite of not having it. Remember that. That is in spite of not having. You don't have it to mirror. So you're choosing to bring forth creation. So you're going to be something you never had. And the inspiration you say is a part of that was me trying to give you something I wish I had. And my inspiration was from somebody trying and almost eclipsing in value that pain with their presence. That was the inspiration for me to do that for you. And now you're about to be a father. Words can't explain, man. I said I'm going to do this episode. I'm not going to cry. You ain't going to catch me crying. You understand me? But the level of love I have for my nephew, King, I would have protected you with everything I had in every last one of those moments you wish you had me. And to believe that I would have been there, that means that something I did must have been right, where you believed in me enough that even when I wasn't there, you believe I would have been. And sometimes just my words, you call me for advice or text me about something or want my opinion on a woman that you're choosing to love and that you choose to have been with all this time, and y'all having a baby together. You're creating a family to fulfill that dream like you're doing now. And I believe that you are improvement on my model. So I believe you already understand this. And that's what I believe is going to make you cry when you look in your son in his eyes. If you haven't already, you've probably already experienced it. This episode going to be out and you're going to be like, yeah, I remember I already did that shit when this little big ass was born. Now you just a little waterhead, little motherfucker getting on my nerve. But I know in that moment, I know as men, we don't talk about how deep our feelings are. Now we probably should more. I think we become better versions of ourselves when we do. That's why I tell a motherfucker, like, it ain't soft to show your emotions. It's just when a motherfucker that's soft showing his emotions, it make it look like that's go together. It don't. It don't. Real men show their emotions. They explore them. They understand them. Because to understand means you went through the pain and survived. Because remember what I told you, I believe pain is a lack of understanding. And what did I tell you? It was pain to get through that next level of understanding yourself. That next level of knowledge yourself. So you have to understand, which means you have to go through pain. Because all your pain is a lack of understanding. So if you understand yourself at a deep emotional level, that means you went through some pain, and which would make you, to me, strong. How can I understand myself so deeply and not be strong? How can I understand myself so deeply and not take a motherfucker head off for disrespecting me? How can I understand myself so deeply, which means I understand the value of you, and not protect you with everything in me? I will fight to I will fight till I'm unable to protect you, because I understand myself so deeply. You are my equal. You are my reflection. And it's just how far, how deeply can you understand yourself for you to give that level of yourself to me, for us to love one another? Because if we're askew in any area, well, I choose not to face my pain that I'm in a job I don't want to have, or face my pain that I can't provide like I want to provide, or face the pain of you have to call another man boss, and this is the only way you can feed your family. If you don't face these pains and you decide to blame everybody else, don't take responsibility. Man, if only they would have did this, I could have. No, accept your failures. It's who you are. Not saying you're a failure, but if you are your actions, but at any moment you can choose something else. So you can fail 100 yesterdays ago and today be your succeed. No matter how many times you fail, if you still here, that means you got an opportunity to succeed. And your only options are fear or faith. So if we understand ourselves so deeply and value the responsibility that we can choose to take, because what you choose to do is up to you. And we choose to take the responsibility of trying to give someone something we never had. And now King is about to do that, and he brung forth creation. He gets to be the thing we wanted while giving to his son something he never had at the same time. I haven't had the blessing to do that, but he has. And I'm so happy for him. I'm so happy for him that he gets this opportunity. And it's so amazing to watch him do it and imagine how he's going to do it going forward in every single moment. Just watching him succeed makes me, that's a success for me. To be that to him is a success for me, because I tried my fucking hardest, and my failures and everything. I even remember when I did the episode, I think it was episode 12, First Story Time with Q. I think he listened to it and he just texted me saying like, no, uncle, you didn't fail me or anything like that. Like, you didn't do anything wrong. Because I was saying in the episode how I wish I was in a better place to try to give him that love. I got him fighting kids bigger than him because I don't want you to ever get bullied like I got bullied. I want you to be strong and tough. You know what I'm saying? So it's like my way of trying to protect him from my fears. I say, I wish I would have did it a better way. And he immediately hit me up and told me like, no. He said, he told me I couldn't have done it any better. That motherfucker told me I had a flawless victory in trying to give him an image to look at. Hopefully he can replicate and do it better. And that motherfucker tell me I ain't did nothing wrong. He said I couldn't have did it better. What? I'm like, don't do this to me. You trying to make me cry? You ain't gonna make me cry. But it means the world to me. And now he gets to succeed and do two things. And it's gonna be fucking hilarious to watch. Cause I'm grandpa. Don't forget that. I'm grandpa. Yeah, that's right. I'm a granddaddy. That's right. Yeah, damn it. If I'm the pa, I'm grandpa. So tell your son, call me grandpa. And Donnie as great grandpa. Because that was the nigga that was the father figure for me. Hey, man, I should tell y'all a crazy story. Donnie ass is hilarious. So Donnie ass been wanting to be old since he was young. Donnie ass couldn't wait to be like, oh, I'm too tired. I'm too old to be doing this shit. Donnie was 21. He couldn't wait. Boy, wait till I get old. Donnie ass just, I told the nigga for years, man, let's go hoop or something. Too old. I'm like, nigga, you 32. Calm down. Nigga, you not old yet. Not yet. Oh, I got mad as hell. When that nigga got 40, I said, nah, ain't no stopping him. He can't wait to play the old card. I'm too old for that. He be talking about music like he old as hell. But you know, I need some Johnny Mathis. I'm like, boy, get your young old ass the fuck out of here, Donnie. Little young old ass, man. But I love that motherfucker, man. Donnie ass the only motherfucker in the world that gets a infinite pass for me. Like, motherfucker do something I don't like, I cut you off or cut you. Goddamn it. It'll be a whole problem. Or I'm just move the fuck around on your ass. You feel me? So Donnie the only motherfucker that gets an infinity pass because of what he did in those few moments. And he don't understand how few they was. This motherfucker Donnie, I was talking to this motherfucker Donnie. And I'm telling him like, yeah, you know, when I had braids. Donnie said, you had braids? I said, yeah, nigga, I had braids twice. 2 separate occasions of braids. He said, damn. I said, what the fuck? I said, Donnie, do you know I hadn't seen you in years, nigga? He was like, what? You sure? I was like, nigga, you wasn't around for a lot of shit. And those are all those times where I ain't even did a lot of other story times with Q's I can do. But imagine those story time with Q's. So those are some of the moments that Donnie wasn't there to, you know, protect me like I wish he would have. But I never blamed him like he should have. But I felt like if he was there, he would have. That's the way I believed in Donnie. No matter how tough or whatever I was going through, whenever I thought of Donnie, it was always, I believe he would change this if he was here, if he knew about it, or if he could. And just that was enough for me. Cause fuck it, I tell the story. So there's this event. You know what? Let me see. How long I've been talking? Yeah, so this is gonna be all about King. Donnie, I'll do an episode about you another time. All right. And you know what's crazy? You deserve a whole episode because I love you that much too, Donnie, for real. I felt like Donnie imparted things on me. And Donnie talked for a long ass time too. That's probably where I get it from. But Donnie would talk about things. And I think he used to think that what he was saying was what he was imparting upon me that I value so much. It wasn't. Even though he said some good shit, but a lot of times Donnie has just be talking. What I really got from all those talks and the story I'm going to get into on another episode when Donnie get his own episode, what he gave me was, you're going to do this in a moment when I know you don't have to. Because I watched the person that was supposed to do that for me not do it. So if they didn't give a fuck enough to do it, what makes you take the responsibility to even try to do it? That's how valuable that shit was to me that Donnie gave me. So King, everything I tried to do for you, the love I have for you was all inspired by the effort that Donnie put in a little bit of time. And he don't know how much that little bit meant to me. And from the way King has talked to me and told me things, it makes me feel like I may have possibly been that for him. And to be at least that for him makes me feel like I succeeded. So every time you ever call me Pops, called yourself QD Jr., every time it was a situation where you were going through something and I call you and talk to you and you tell me like nobody else can calm you down. I remember, and I don't know if you remember, I remember one time, it ain't gonna be too embarrassing, King. Okay, I promise, I love you. But I remember one time, his little ass was, he was a little crybaby, little punk ass. He used to scream his little head off. Yeah, let's talk about it. Now you got a baby. Your baby finna get you back for all the shit you did to me, goddammit. So King ass, now I'm only 6 years older than him. So I gotta go to school and all this shit. King ass, he used to want all my attention. So there was no going outside really when King was coming up. Now granted, I was poor, so it wasn't like outside was the shit. But this is the reason why I wasn't outside so much at that age. It's because King was still living with us. So it's like similar to what Donnie did. He choosing not to go hustle and sell drugs and all that because of what he wanted us coming behind him to see. So his ass would sit there and just scream his head off. He used to cry so hard, it used to look like, damn, does that hurt? Like, are you hurting yourself? Stop hurting yourself. Like, his ass used to scream. Like, he would not, like, he wanted what he wanted so bad. He was like, nigga, I will cry for it. And we'd be like, okay, go ahead, cry. We don't give a fuck. We're going to just let you cry yourself to sleep. That nigga said, I will super cry for it. We said, nigga, keep super crying. He said, nigga, I die for this shit. I want it so bad. Like, what happened? That nigga would cry himself into a seizure. I said, what the fuck? I said, what do you want? He was like, nigga, you. What did you talking about? Where the fuck you think you going? How the fuck you gonna go outside and I'm here? I was like, okay, my bad. Motherfucker wouldn't go to sleep. Oh, I used to have to lay him on my chest. Yeah, the nigga bigger than me. Don't lay your big ass on. Your big ass, goddamn it. Motherfucker big as hell. Want to lay his big ass on girl. Boy, if you don't get your motherfucking, that nigga built like a mammoth. My nephew big as shit, y'all. That motherfucker like is it a mammoth? What is it, a mammoth? Yeah, that nigga built like a mammoth. Like when you see that nigga, King Man's built like a mammoth. Want to play like he's still like, that nigga used to be real little. Like I used to just, like I say, he slept on my chest and shit because his ass didn't want to go to bed as a baby. And this same motherfucker, man, like his ass was tripping because that's what he do. He gon' trip. Remember how I'm a superior class clown? He was a superior trip about whatever the fuck it is he want. Like he would die for his shit. I would cry myself to death if you don't give me what the fuck I want. So we already knew he was spoiled, right? And I spoiled him. But it seemed like he only wanted me. The only spoil he had was some shit with me. So a little while later, he a little older now. He in his, I think he was in his teens. Probably could have been in his 20s. I'm going to say teens, though. So, yeah, he was in his teens. I be forgetting I'm only 6 years older than him. So, yeah, he was in his teens. But that nigga was tripping about something. And his mama, like, called me, right? So he was just tripping. She said, I don't know what to do. I said, why is he tripping? She tell me, I'm like, what? We talked about that. So I say, put me on speakerphone. So I just hear him tripping. She said, she trying to talk to him. My sister Quinn trying to talk to him. And he not trying to hear none of that shit. So I say, King. Motherfucker, stop. Came up to the phone, got on the phone and shit. Had a little talk with him, like, come on, King. Like, we men. You have to be stronger than that. We the only men around for these women. I understand this is what you want. I understand that. Like I broke some shit down to him. We talked about, I ain't gonna go too deep in the conversation. But to watch him go from hectic to calm because he valued my words, my give a fuck in this moment enough that it affected him. That means he trusted me that much in that moment. He valued me that much in that moment. Just my word could affect him that now he's calm. And to just feel like if I really did that for him, that means the world to me because he means the world to me. This nigga was number one. Big ass. He had a nice long reign too. Goddamn, he reigned supreme. Number one. Who couldn't give a fuck most about King? I'm gonna edit that shit out. I definitely shouldn't have said that. And he's about to make my dream come true and watch him be an improvement on my model as his role model. And that shit is just amazing to see. And I'm so fucking happy for him. It's not a lot of things that have or can make me happy. And that shit tough when you realize the number one thing I value is love. But that's a whole nother episode that I'll probably get into some shit another time about. But that person is about to make my dream come true simply by making their dream come true. Because that's how much I love them. That's how important I believe a role model can be to someone. So what someone chooses to do is up to them. Because believe it or not, we are all someone's perception. We're what they see. We're what they hear. So if what we choose to do is up to us, and we are naturally going to be role models to the people that come after us, why not choose to be a good role model? And if all you have is today, no matter how many yesterdays have passed, they're gone now. You only have today. And every time you choose to do something good, I can't do anything but praise that, watching a God do something amazing, because it's something I can never do. I can never be you, King, but I love watching this amazing story of yours. And I'm anticipating the seasons to come because I have so much faith in you that this show is going to be amazing. That's how happy for you I am. I'm refraining from saying proud, J. Cole say, pride is the devil. And y'all know I don't fuck with the devil like that. I said ignorance mixed with arrogance. That's what I believe the devil is, but whatever. Anyway, so I'm refraining from saying proud because I'm something far beyond proud. Because if no God can impede on another God, how strong is what someone's showing someone that it actually affects them? I believe we are walking energy. This is why I think we vibrate, but that's a whole nother thing. When I get into some science stuff, I'll break that stuff down to you. I'll show you. I could do this scientifically too. I told y'all I'm a nerd. I got a lot of useless. But imagine that the love I chose to have for you was me trying to replicate something that was given to me because I felt that same missing pain. And because how much I know I hurt, I tried my best to make you hurt just a little bit less if I could. So even the times that I wasn't there, even the times I couldn't protect you, I believe you know I would have if I could have. And now you take on the responsibility of being an improvement on your own model to you. And pride is not a word that can fully define or describe how I feel. So the simplest way I can describe it is that I am affected so deeply in my being watching you succeed. So I'm going to do a Donnie episode by itself, but you're a father, you're a dad, all that shit now, King. And I wish you nothing but success. Even when you feel like you fail, you constantly giving a fuck is success. You know that's all we truly wanted. You know both of us, that's all we really wanted was somebody to just give a fuck. So I don't give a fuck if you can't get him something that you want him to have because you want him to have it. Remember, that's you being selfish right now. You're trying to give yourself something by giving it to them because it makes you feel good. And I'm so happy that you will. But what they probably really want is you to constantly give a fuck. So it's not a failure that you couldn't buy this, or it's not a failure that you couldn't be there in a time that they were scared. All the times you showed them and you showed them you give a fuck, even when you're not there, they gonna believe that you would have been if you could. And now you get to be there as many times as you possibly can. And by I know you're gonna always give a fuck. That's why I can logically wish you the best and so much success. Because the man you are, your acts, you will always give a fuck. You have so strong a reason to give a fuck. And because you're an improvement on my model, you understand it already. And now you're going to be an improvement on your model that you're going to set. So every single day you can improve on whoever you was yesterday. The father you was the day before that. The dad you was the day before that. You only have today. Hey, look, I'm still not taking no L's on that court. So I don't give a fuck what you talking about. Look here. Goddamn it, don't have me start working out again, because I'll meet you on the court. I come out there, visit, bust your ass like you get your ass whooped as a daddy. That's what happened. You had to get your first ass whooping on the court as a father. Don't have me be the one that give it to you. So don't start talking shit. Because King, look here, I'll lace them up. You know I come out that bitch like the GOAT. You feel me? No, you know that the fans, whoever listening, y'all may not know. King know how fucking raw I am on that motherfucking court. And that nigga cold. Ugh, that nigga crossed the shit out of me. Ugh. Remember when he punched me in the face? I was already mad about that. I almost knocked his ass out, but I love him, so I did not. And that was already amazing. So I'm like, this nigga, how the fuck he get good enough to touch my face? I trained him how to fight, but how the fuck is he improving on what the fuck I taught him? I'm gonna have to kick his ass and show him who's the boss. But yeah, so I ain't gonna let you bust my ass on that court. So anyway, you get to be an improvement on your own model. And I just believe in you enough that you got this, man. You got this. And I know you're excited. I should call this episode, I'm a Grandpa. But I may call it like something like the importance of role models. But thank you guys for rocking with me this was another episode. I just wanted to talk about somebody, and man, I could tell so many stories, King. But I'm gonna probably have some more story times with you, and you'll just be in it. You'll be in it. She'll talk about the time me and, old girl that your mama introduced me into. I ain't gonna say her name. And when we got caught downstairs doing what we weren't supposed to be doing. Thank y'all for rocking with me, man. This has been the show. I know it's still in wisdom. Let me wrap it up to make y'all show it still connects. Now, granted, I don't give a fuck. I can not let it connect, goddammit. Because this is my nephew. This is how much he means to me to take the spot, goddammit. But at the end of Tony episode, I did break a little conscious connection for you and did all that shit, right? So I'm going to do this for you then. So let me show you how it's connected in wisdom. Because of everything that I went through and all the times that I believed that I failed with my nephew, Keem, all the times I felt like I wasn't there and he needed me. All the times I pulled up late, I was ready to kill, fight, die, go to jail for him. But I wasn't there when it happened and he needed me. So all those times I looked at those things as failures. Every time I imagined he struggled and I wasn't there, the times he hasn't told me about, I always looked at those things as failures. But what I'm saying is, if you just step back a little bit, you expand your perception, you can see more. And once you understand more, you can. So the wisdom in it is find what you can do and do that. And sometimes all you really got to do is find the spots that are important in your life to give a fuck. And you're a God. You're the only one that gets to choose. You can choose to simply not and be a bad role model, or 2 and be a good role model. Give a fuck what you want to do. And I just think that's something he has in spades. He give a fuck. He give a fuck about, family members. He give a fuck about his siblings. He takes on those responsibilities even before being a father. I bet you he probably didn't have many talks with his little brother and his little sister. And I know, King, you wish you were there to protect in situations, but they know you gave a fuck. They know you would have been there and done it if you could. Just like I believe you know it. And to feel like the Joseph to his Jesus. Like, I didn't bring you into this world. I didn't actually create you. I didn't have a hand in creating you, but I still chose to stay and be there. I know I could have left. This ain't even my baby. I'm out, bitch. You thought some guy got you pregnant. Who was you out there fucking? Bitch, you think I'm gonna just believe this? First off, what kind of talk did Mary have to convince that nigga God got her pregnant, my G? This shit ain't never happened before. That shit don't make no sense. Let your girl come in the house pregnant, talk some God. That shit crazy. But anyway, any part I had to play on it, no matter how much it means to you, that's how much you succeeding means to me. And the wisdom of it is, if we're all in this together and the actions you play on someone can affect what comes after them, whoever comes up behind them, your actions can have a greater impact than you may be thinking. Which means if that type of good role model creates something, chances are they're going to an improvement on the previous model. Now, scientifically, that would be evolution. But who am I to say everything is connected and we all do the exact same things? That's why whatever dies off, whatever survives, has to be an improvement on the model, because that means it had to be able to survive the terrain that what came before it could not. But let me get my ass out of here, because I'm just sitting here basically in my emotions talking about how much I love this little nigga and how happy I am for him and his lady. Love you too, just because you don't know I really love you. Hey, King, don't look at me like that. I'm just saying, like, I love her, because if she love you and you love her, first off, I love her just for loving you. That's how much I give a fuck about you. I love her just because she loves you. So you cannot love her. I'm a lover, but I know you love her. Now, I don't know everything y'all got going on every day. I ain't got no cameras or nothing. I ain't creepy. What I'm saying is, like, No matter what you go through in a relationship, you're going to go through something in a relationship because it's a relationship. Life isn't going to always go the way you want it. Just like I taught you how to be a man, managing anything necessary. So sometimes shit may get tough, but you still fight through it. I learned that from watching Donnie. No matter how much the odds are stacked against you, no matter how many times you hear people saying, it's this, man, they going to keep me down because of this. And then this is going to happen like this. Can't nobody affect you but you. Only you can affect your actions. You can choose to do something based off what another motherfucker told you, or have you been inspired to think for yourself? And if you choose to think for yourself, what was in your perception that you're choosing to pull from to make your choice? But it's going to be the importance of a role model. And I could do this with my nieces too. I love y'all. I got 2 nieces. Well, them motherfuckers are inspirations. They should make a Bible about both of them motherfuckers. Like the Old Testament, New Testament, both of them motherfuckers are amazing. Them motherfuckers, their strength. Whew, y'all motherfuckers, boy. Their strength. This is how amazing women are. And my nieces are fucking walking examples of that. But let me get my ass out of here. But I appreciate y'all for rocking with me. You know, there's power in the question. Information is information. This is season 2. Season 2 will definitely be more wisdom based, but I'm going to be a little deeper in my consciousness. You guys are going to see how I zone out a little deeper about things, I guess, if you will. But it's going to be from the perspective of wisdom, which I think is deeper. I think it's knowledge itself, then wisdom. But this is just, again, my story in how I perceive creation itself and everything. And I believe it's also reflective. But don't let your past bully your present into becoming your future, because what they call pure is tampered with. The cure can't answer it. You're lost in the world looking for answers. That's answer.
Look, man, this show finna change, y'all. Spoon fed long enough, now it's game on. Flame on, Johnny Storm with his napalm. Stay calm, yeah, strong, but it ain't on. Excuse me? But there's power in the question. You'll see that the power's in your essence. Confuse me? But I found it impressive. I constantly responded and found a reflection. Is also reflective. Now tell me what is info. Disregard, you don't know what your info. Start saying you a god playing limbo. That shit had you at odds with your kinfolk. You telling me it came from God cause I'm in rote. Forgive me, but it's hard to compress all his knowledge of self and astonishing in post. To invoke, I'm a god that's within quotes. I've been dope and my conscience a big hope. Accuse me if you think that I'm wrong when I speak with my balls, but this is his show.